Well, Riverside says we're streaming, but LinkedIn does not.
Okay.
So I guess we'll see how this works out.
Well, somebody's recording something, so.
Well, kind of annoying. Anyway, hi.
Hi. Hi,
Let's
people.
assume. Oh, there it is. Oh,
Oh, we're very technologically savvy.
all right. So we're gonna say go live. This is really weird. All right. Well, I think we're live. I think we've been live. So all of this flubbing around here for the last couple minutes, I think is going to be part of our episode number 3. Technology at its finest. What are we going to do?
We're coaches. Isn't that what we do? We don't do technology.
Well, we do, but we're not. We didn't stay at the Holiday Inn last night, right? Isn't that the joke from the commercials?
Yes, you're funny.
But have
Speaking of
fun.
jokes, what's your joke, Darren?
Okay. You know where the Colorado Rockies play at Coors Field?
Yeah?
Holds about 50,000 fans. It's just a ballpark figure.
That's stupid. I got it though. I mean, right? 1 out of 3. I got it.
You know any jokes?
I don't have any jokes. I'm not the
No
jokester.
jokes. No joke.
No, I know. You're the jokester. You're the storyteller. You're the jokester. You're the extrovert, the talker, the networker. Not me. All right, let's get busy here for people that are actually watching to maybe learn something other than watch us banter back and forth.
All right. So today's topic is about invisible management or invisible micromanagement. And for full disclosure, this is more of a you thing than a me thing. For a little extra context, it's kind of funny when you and I get into these conversations in our house, which are often topics that come up in our coaching sessions, and then we talk about it. And you primarily coach women, primarily corporate women, leaders of organizations who also happen to be moms and wives, sisters and daughters. And this idea of invisible micromanagement comes up a lot with your clients, a little less so with mine. And I think it's also important, as you're smirking at me, is when you tell me some of these stories, like I get so annoyed and frustrated with this concept of invisible micromanagement, because it's just not, it's not that it's not relevant. It's not prevalent, I guess, in my life, or at least I don't think it is, and that of my clients, but it is a great topic. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder if it doesn't come up with your clients because it doesn't come up with you. It's not a thing for you. And therefore, you might not think to ask it. So for anybody who's listening to this, Darren and I, we've got this. Is it a man thing? Is it a woman thing? Is it his clients, my clients? So in the comments, everybody needs to be Team Rachel and be on my side and tell me it's not just me and my clients. It's just Darren who doesn't invisibly micromanage. Which, by the way, let's tell everybody what invisible micromanagement is. Oh, you can't tell them because you don't know. Never mind. I'll take over.
Oh my God.
Okay. Invisible micromanagement is when you're keeping track of everything in your own head. And everything meaning things that you have delegated to other people, things that other people have that don't belong to you, that belongs, like Darren, I would be micromanaging things that you do in the house, like, right, you're in charge of the garbage and you're in charge of all the laundry. And so I would be managing in my head of like, oh, I need to remind him to take the garbage out. And I need to remind him of getting garbage bags. And I need to remind him that I've got my nice sweater in there and that needs to be on the gentle cycle and laid dried flat. And I got to remind him that we need laundry detergent when it's not mine to manage. And I hear this a lot with my clients with their teams. So they have given responsibilities to individuals, and then in their head, they're working through the day and they're like, oh, well, I gotta check in on that thing that I asked so-and-so to do. And I gotta remind them to, double check on the hotel reservation. Or I heard this one, my husband said he was making dinner tonight and I know we don't have the broccoli, so I need to remind him. And so you're managing all this shit that is not yours to manage, and it distracts you, but most importantly, it exhausts you. And then you become resentful because you still feel like you're doing all the work, but it's not yours to do. So you're causing your own problem. And so that is what invisible micromanagement looks like on my end. And then typically you kind of blow. And then, there's something that happens, and maybe you don't blow at work, but you blow at home. And then you have to apologize. And then you got to wonder what's wrong with you. And then you have to get coaching or go to therapy. And it's this whole downstream effect. Darren.
All right. So what is the difference between invisible and visible micromanagement?
Okay. So invisible, it's all in your head. Like, you're not... Many times women, not even women, but my clients are mainly women, so I'm just going to go there. They're actually not communicating it. That's not true now that you say that. So invisibly they're managing it, and then visibly one of two things will happen. They will do the follow-up, ask the question, send the text, send the reminder, or because it's causing so much like, I don't know if it's going to be done. I don't know if I trust it's going to be done. There's so much uncertainty and apprehension and anxiety within them. They just go and do it themselves. So maybe the invisible micromanagement leads to micromanaging. Aha.
All right, let me put this in my words because I got a little confused, to be honest. When you talk about the invisible micromanagement of your clients, it's often associated with home. It is the mental tally of all the stuff that's got to get done. And that is what you said just a minute ago. It's Bobby's clothes need to get washed. My partner is playing golf, and I have to make sure he's got a sandwich to play golf and he's got his, orange golf shirt is clean. And this is the stuff that I hear from you. And I'm oversimplifying it, but it's a lot of stuff. It's keeping the household together in addition to all of the rigor and demands of being a working professional. Your clients are often high-performing executive women. So they're high-performing at work and they're high-performing at home.
Yes. And I cannot disagree with you or argue with you on that. A lot of it does stem at home. It happens at work too, maybe not to the extent that it happens at home, but it does happen at work, and I see less of it coming out and more of my clients just thinking about it, not being able to let it go. Like if it pops in their head and be like, no, they got it. That's why I hired this team. This is why I brought this consultant. These are right. They've got it, but they're still in their mind, maybe ruminating about it. And it creates a little bit of uncertainty and anxiety. But you're right. A lot of it is at home. So there's CEOs at work. There's CEOs at home. They're micromanaging. They're overdoing. They are carrying the invisible load. And they haven't totally transferred the skill from work to home. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that happens that, I coach my clients on, but they haven't made that leap at home to be like, no, you said you have it. You have it.
You started to go to the impact, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes ago. So as you talk to your clients and they're managing this invisible load and they're invisibly micromanaging life, what starts to happen? And then, my word is always explode, because that's often how I express anger and discontent, etc. That may not be true for your clients, but what is it how do they start to ramp up when they're overloaded? And then what's the blow up or the explosion?
When I say this, I'm going to say from the typically what I see. It looks 100 different ways, but typically what starts to happen is the over managing and overdoing, then quite frankly lets your partner or your team off the hook. So you're just the one who's going to do it and you're going to figure it out. So everybody else can just kick back and they don't step in. And so then you double your efforts and you start to do more, because it's easier just to do it yourself than it is to slow down and have to go through the communication pathway, like we talked about 2 weeks on our LinkedIn Live, the implicit and explicit agreements and communication, to trust. This is a big one, to trust that the other person is going to do it. Now you have to let go of doing it your way. And it creates a sense of over control that starts to burn you out. There's no break. There's no rest, whether that be within your brain or your body. You're doing. So then what happens is you only have so much time in the day. And so what I see with my clients is the things that they start to chip away or take off their plate are things that actually restore them, improve their health, give them fulfillment, sleep. They're like, oh, I'll just sleep a little bit less, or I'll get up an hour early to get my workout in. Well, then the hour early is too much. So they start to skip the workout. They let all the things go that are beneficial for their well-being, and they are overdoing all the other things that, quite frankly, if they would just get out of the way, right? The people that they have in their lives they can do what they're expected of. Everybody can participate. So I see their health deteriorate. I see low-level anxiety, depression. I see resentment. I see a lot of unhappiness. Just unhappy and like, is this as good as it gets? They feel invisible, like they're not recognized for their efforts and their energies. And they're just fucking exhausted, just so exhausted all the time. It's a super fun place.
What's that term you mentioned recently? Is that people feel like they're at a boil?
Yeah, I've heard this a few times lately. Is like they feel like they're constantly at a boiling point, like they're boiling, and they just want to come down to a simmer. Right? Like there's just so much to manage. But when we do, like what I have them do is an audit. So a thought audit. And when we start to, which is very time consuming, but it's totally worth it. And when you start to like track all of your thoughts, you start to recognize how many things you're keeping a tally and keeping track of that are not yours to keep track of. And so of course you're boiling, right? You keep turning up the heat. You keep taking on more. And it might even be that you're taking on more, but you're thinking, right? Your reality, your life is experienced through your thoughts in your head. And so if you're filling it with a bunch of stuff that's not even yours to manage, and you have all of your other stuff to manage, and you have this big job, it's a boiling point. You don't have that?
Not to the way you're describing it, no. I mean, there's a few thoughts that are going through my head. Well, multiple, actually. Well, There's a lot of thoughts going through my head. The first is, you know my mom well enough. And the way I was raised is to speak up. Now, in my mom's infinite wisdom and what was imparted to me, and as a younger man, I didn't speak up with a lot of discretion, respect, courtesy, even politeness. You know, I was kind of a New York asshole. So I share that because what I hear in a lot of your stories is an unwillingness for the person to speak up. And so not only are they invisibly micromanaging it, but they're not even speaking about, I need help, or can you do this, or this was supposed to, there's none of that stuff going on. There's no speaking up. And it's actually the contrary, which is, I'm not going to ask for help. I'm not going to ask for support. I'm not going to ask you to do something because, and the number one answer you often give is because there's fear of retaliation.
Yeah.
So like, these are the symptoms that I hear from you about what leads to this invisible micromanagement. And so as I hear it and I think about us coaching and the way we talk to our clients is, there is a big element of speak up. And I know it's not that easy just to speak up. It's not like we just wave a wand and speak up. But I do think the lack of speaking up is an important ingredient to people's invisible micromanagement, and then that leads to the boil.
It's definitely a contributing factor. You know, I didn't speak up in our relationship for years because I wasn't, for all the reasons, right? Which I take full responsibility for now. But it was all the reasons, like I wasn't modeled to speak up. I was retaliated against when I spoke up. I, for a long time, was single parenting. Quite frankly, even when I was married, I felt like I was single parenting. And therefore, I had to do everything on my own. So it became habitual. It just became me. And then right, as we experienced, every 3 months, I would lose it, have a breakdown, and then you're like, what's going on? But I didn't know how to tell you what was going on. And I think that the communication part of it is one thing, and you have to be in a safe place to do it, right? We work with leaders. If you're in an organization where it's not safe to speak up and there will be retaliation, of course you're going to head down and you're going to micromanage everything, visible and invisible. But at home, then it's a different conversation. If you can't speak up with your partner, it's a whole different coaching conversation. But yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It's just, can the person speak up? Is it safe to?
And I think this is where we get into the interrelatedness of life. You know, we all have isms. I've got my own Darren isms, I call them. It's the spiels, it's the sayings, it's the things I say over and over again. And what I tell a lot of prospective clients or people that become new clients is, you are you no matter what role you're actually playing at the time, right? For me, I'm always my mom's son and my brother and sister's sibling and your partner and the founder of the Canthal Group and the friend of all of my friends and all the other roles that I play them every single moment of every single day. And the whole idea of checking your emotions at the door is bullshit. You know, if you and I are having an argument, I bring that through my entire day. And yes, I can compartmentalize it in moments, but it's there, it's brewing. And so I share that because we know too that the topics our clients bring sometimes are surface. And what I think I'm hearing, or at least what I'm interpreting, is the invisible micromanagement is real. It happens. And yes, I do it too. It may not be as prevalent as some of your stories, and my clients do it as well. But it's often the indicator that there's something else brewing. And I think it's that something else that is really at the core of the root cause of why people micromanage or whether it's visible or invisible. It's the unwillingness to speak up. It's lacking trust in others and in ourselves. I call it judge from positive intelligence. Imposter syndrome has kind of cornered the market as a term right now, but our ego and our insecurities play a part. When I see people micromanaging, it's often because either they don't trust the security of their job, and so they micromanage to make it look like they're important and that they're irreplaceable. Because if I do all this stuff, you can't get rid of me. I do all these things. And then the other piece of that is I micromanagement, I don't trust you. And part of the reason I don't trust you is multifaceted, but a lot of times it's because I've never told you where you've fallen short, where you've eroded my trust. I haven't given you the opportunity to regain my trust. And so then the byproduct is I'm going to micromanage the shit out of you. I'm going to watch everything you do. And I'm going to tell you how to do it and how you screwed it up and why I want it done this way. And I never allow you to have agency and the free will to do it your way, assuming we get to the right outcome or the outcome we're set out for.
I think trust is a huge piece of it. And we cannot separate. I don't care who you are. We don't live in silos. You cannot separate who you are and how you act at the core from work or at home. And quite frankly, you carry a lot of behavior traits back and forth between the two. Now, I'm not saying, right? Again, we've got very successful clients and how they show up at work looks very different than how they show up home, but at the core. And trying to be two different people in two different environments is also exhausting. But going back to yes, there has to be that external trust. I have to trust that you're going to hear me when I tell you about the laundry and my $300 cashmere sweater and not ruin it. I have to trust you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And there has to be some evidence to that. I don't believe trust is just turning on a light switch. But there also has to be internal trust within yourself. You have to trust yourself that you have communicated in the right way. But more importantly, that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. You will be okay. No matter if you speak up in the meeting, no matter if you, speak up at home and there's retaliation. A lot of times for my clients and myself included, I didn't trust myself that I would be okay. Until I realized it doesn't matter what happens around me. It doesn't matter what happens in my job or with my marriage or my relationship with you or the business. I know that I will always be okay. So I don't have to hold on with such a tight grip. I don't have to keep track of every little thing because it's going to be okay. And I think that is a huge part of it, is trust is internal and it's external. And trust that, at the end of the day, no matter the feeling that comes, no matter the emotion, because really what we're trying to do is mitigate some type of shitty emotion, right? I don't want to be disappointed by you or our team or that's really what we're trying to mitigate, is feeling something. At the end of the day, we've all felt every emotion possible at our age. Let's just say at our age, we've experienced every single emotion possible and we have survived it. So that's another piece of it, is if somebody doesn't do something that you ask them to do, you're going to be disappointed, but you're going to survive that. And so don't hang on to that. Don't keep running it through your head and replaying it and causing so much angst within yourself that you just go and do it yourself and just get it done with so you can stop thinking about it, but you're just going to replace it with the next thing.
Two things that what?
I was I don't think this is resonating with you.
No, it is.
Oh, it is. Okay. You had this look. Sorry.
No, I was just waiting to see if I was going to cut you off. I have a habit of doing that.
That's true.
I was going to say the trust in self is resonant for me and for a lot of my clients, because when we don't trust what's going to come out of our mouth or how we deliver an expectation or how we hold you accountable, then we often do the opposite. It's not the opposite, but then I'll say the opposite. Instead of delegating, we hold it ourselves because I don't trust that I can delegate effectively. So that whole idea of trusting the self is totally resonant. I sidetracked my own brain. There was something else you had said. I lost it. It's okay. Let's segue just a tiny bit to when you notice your clients are in this churn of invisible micromanagement or visible micromanagement, but micromanagement overarchingly. Other than the thought audit you walk them through and coach them through, what are some other actionable things people can do when they notice they're in this churn of invisible micromanagement?
Sometimes a thought audit is really hard to do because you know how fast the brain processes, right? So it's really hard to grab. So thought audit is great when you can grab it, when you're in the moment. So I encourage everybody to do it. A more tactical, like if you like being in control, thing that I have my clients do is we do a time audit. Not just at work, but at home too. And we take that and we put it at, again, time consuming, but worth every single minute. And you start to look at your calendar from the time you get up until the time you go to bed at all the things that you're doing. And then I take my clients through that and say, okay, well, what are your actual priorities? So we can do this at work and we can do this at home. So like at work, we can say, what are you actually hired for? What are your KPIs? We love that word, but what are your expectations? How much of this that you're doing is not yours? So you don't do something unless you think about doing it first, whether it's intentional or conscious or unconscious. You have to make the decision to do something. So you shore up with, well, what are you actually supposed to be doing? What are your responsibilities? And you go through and you find all the things that you're doing that are not you. You do that at home and you do that at work. And then from there, we take all those things, your 4D methodology that you taught me that I had to do years ago in my business. And we say, all right, what goes under the do category? This is what you committed to doing. You said that you would take from start to finish. That is yours. You keep it. Everything else, you have to figure out, delete, defer, or delegate. And you got to move it off of your plate. And then from there, you have to manage yourself. I mean, I coached a woman 2 weeks ago and she's like, well, how do I do that? How do I manage my own brain? How do I know? It's not to sound like kind of I was going to say it's called adulting. But it's adulting. It's managing your brain. It's when you go to step in to reload the dishwasher that you manage yourself by saying, no, that is not my expectation. It's when you want to interject, and because your partner said that they had the birthday party for your 2-year-old from start to finish, by the way, and you want to jump in there and just double check on things, you have to manage yourself to back out. You have to get a grip on your brain and how you use it, and stay in your lane and practice being uncomfortable, not being in the weeds and wanting to dive in and wanting to over control and wanting to save or whatever it is that you're doing. That's the visible way of doing it. You have to practice. Tactical. I would also add, it does help if the people that you are delegating to, that you can trust them. And if you don't out of the gates, to have very clear expectations of what it looks like. And when I say start to finish, I mean start to finish. Like you can erase it from your brain. And if it doesn't happen, what is the consequence? So make sure it's very clear, because if somebody says, oh, you've got Joey's birthday party, well, there is a whole lot that is happening invisibly and visibly with that. Or you've got the PR release. There's a lot that's happening. So make sure you're spending the extra time in the beginning to shore this up, because if it doesn't go the way that you want it to, you're just gonna be like, oh, there, see, I knew I couldn't trust anybody. I might as well do it myself. Nobody else can do it this way. It's just easier for me to get it done. And then you perpetuate that behavior and that thinking.
Are you done? No, I'm making sure I'm not interrupting, truly. That didn't sound right, but you know what I'm saying.
It came out as like, are you done now? I'm
you
trying to
done?
listen to you talk. Yes, Darren, I'm done.
Our clients micromanage in totally different ways. And it is fascinating. Because as you talk about the invisible, it's not what goes through my brain. And you're right, maybe I'm not asking the questions because it doesn't really land for me, but I'm not even hearing it on the periphery of my clients. What I do hear more about is over-indexing or over-involving, i.e. micromanaging. And some of the actionable steps that I take with some clients is we start to identify the who. Often for a leader who's got multiple direct reports, there is almost always one or a few people that they micromanage more than anybody else. And so we start to recognize the difference in when I give it to Rachel, I'm hands off. I don't do the invisible micromanagement. But when I give it to Bob, I'm all over him. So we start to identify the people that they micromanage with. Then we start to uncover what are they actually delegating, if they're delegating at all, right? Are they giving Rachel all the hard work and Bob all the easy work because that's as far as, or is as much as I can trust him? The other thing that we start to look at is past discretions. There's a lot of talk, well, I shouldn't say that. I read a book recently called The Speed of Trust. It's a Covey book. The topic of trust is where I was going about. There's a lot of talk of trust in our world, in our lives. But what I notice with clients is that regardless of when it happens or how it happens, is as trust starts to get eroded, whether it's being chipped away or it was like in a big swath of erosion of trust, is they don't communicate that the trust has been eroded. They then start to act different, i.e. they micromanage, and then that relationship does not get repaired because there's a lack of communication about it. So in a very long-winded way, what I'm really saying is it's the identification of who am I micromanaging, why am I micromanaging them, what led me to start micromanaging them, what have I said, what haven't I said, and then the question to the client comes, well, what are you willing to do or not? Like, do you want to go to Rachel and say, my trust is eroded and here's why and here's how you can get it back? Or do you want to continue micromanaging? And it's not always that binary, but in our conversations today, I can make it that way. But that's how I do it with a lot of clients, because I do see the micromanagement just a little less on the invisible side.
I like that. I like maybe stepping back and widening the lens to see, are you doing it with everybody or is it just certain people? I think that's very key, very astute of you.
Well, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. No, it is really good though. That's great, because a lot of times I hear with my clients' husbands, don't hear it when they're talking about their friends and certain people at work. But they also, my clients, I would say the trust falls in those buckets and they're still mentally keeping track of everything. Yeah. So, okay, so I have a question, and I know we're kind of getting on time, but like what happens in your brain then? Like this is legitimate, your brain. Like if you're not invisibly managing these things, Like, what's up there? Like, what happens? Like, and I'm not.
I'm thinking about jokes. When I'm going to mountain bike. What are we having for dinner? Sometimes when life is awkward, I'm debating or discussing or deliberating. Like, why is life awkward right now? What's going on? I look outside and see it's hazy. I don't know. I just, the way I operate with a lot of things, and this is, it bites me in the ass sometimes and it works for me a lot of times. It works better. It works for me more times than not. Is when if I send an email, I'm done. Like whatever I was required to do, it's out. And now the requirement is on you to respond. And my brain is good with that. I had a recent example where like I sent this email 10 days ago and then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I never got this response. Then I followed up on it. So what I'm trying to say is like, once I delegate, do the thing, send the email, make the outreach, whatever, like my brain is done.
So are you used to that working out for you?
A majority of the time, yes.
Huh. Okay, this is a whole nother topic. Like I want everybody, I want to know because I am not used to, that is not my experience. My experience is I make the request or I delegate and either there is a retaliation or it is not done.
Is that a new story or old story?
Well, that's old story. It's not you and I.
No, I know, but I'm saying you say you're used to that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't seem recent.
Well, come on, babe. I mean, sometimes.
Sure, sometimes, but you're saying I'm accustomed to or I'm used to.
No, I am used to that. I would say up until the last 3-4 years of a relationship. But I'm not talking about just our relationship. I'm talking about
work.
Even, prior to that, me prior to you and I. So that is not my experience. That it's just, this is really interesting. I wonder, well, now I'm going to think about that because that is not my reality. I would love to hear what everybody else's reality is. I would like that. I'm super fascinated by this now. Okay. All right. Well, one more thing I want to say with my clients is the impact on their health is exponential when they do this. That's kind of how it all started coming out when I was working more on the functional nutrition therapy side and helping them with their autoimmune diseases or their weight or their hormones or their gut health or whatever it is. And so often this was the story of they're managing it all. And so their stress is so high. And that creates, right, as we know, inflammation in the body, and it throws off our hormones and our insulin and everything. So the number one thing I see from an outward perspective is their health is compromised. Why that came up right now, I don't know. Just felt like the need to say it. Feel like I'm done with this conversation. I'd like to delegate the rest of this to you and have you wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I sometimes like to say, is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to? And I guess you just did that with the health implications.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Did you think about a joke?
No, I don't have a joke. I mean, I only know the ones that you've told me.
Okay.
How diarrhea is hereditary? They say it runs in your genes.
It's a classic.
It's the only one I know.
Well, now I can't tell that one.
No, you can't tell that one. Okay, so remind everybody we're going to be back here next Tuesday-ish.
We'll be here next Tuesday. I think our regular time, let's look real quick. The
9:30.
22nd, we'll be back at 9:15.
Oh, 9:15.
9:15. We like to do things on the 15. So
Yeah,
we'll
and I
see you
won't be micromanaging all the details that have to occur between now and then for our next LinkedIn Live.
Perfect.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you would want to say?
Oh, do I have anything I want to say? I'll say this. For those listening, if you're willing to put in the comments or message Rachel or I directly, one of the things we do debate in our house is this topic of invisible micromanagement a woman thing? Maybe that's the question. Is it a woman thing? Because a lot of the men that I know and coach don't seem to invisibly micromanage, and yet it seems to be very thematic amongst women. The invisible load is a term, right? That was Eve Rodsky.
Eve Rodsky, yep.
And you're not the only woman I've heard, Rachel, that has talked about this. And for most guys I talk to, it's not a thing. So I know it's not always an absolute, but I am curious that it's more of a female to male thing. If anyone listening has a opinion, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I was thinking about that on my walk this afternoon, and I felt annoyed with you because you didn't experience. I did. I was annoyed. I was like, God. And then I also felt envious. And then I was confused because I didn't know then what was in your brain. Like, well, if that's not in your brain, what is in your brain? And that's as far as I got. So I would love to hear everybody's comments on this too.
All right.
Okay.
Why don't we end on that note? See you next
Wrap
time.
it up.
Bye.
See you next Tuesday.
Oh, boy.